on a specific area when we have budget deficit. Just more of teasing out if we still have some domestic revenue miss out in terms of the projections. Are you referring to that we can have a specific loan allocation to a specific area when we don't have that, when we still have some shortfalls in terms of budget allocation? Secondly, just to amplify again what the colleague has just said to the honorable members. So how would you project to be a progressive, what I call progressive monitoring mechanism, when you always indicate that there is a mismatch, a mislink between you, the legislature, and the executive? So how best can you actually provide what we call a progressive monitoring mechanism so that we do away with some lamentations that we have been discussing over long? So what should we do next? What is the solution when you always say you are given limited time to actually execute and evaluate loan authorization bills amidst other documents? Thank you so much.
Great. Oh, okay, I see a couple more hands. Let's take those, and then after this, we'll then come back to the panel for closing remarks and responses. So the lady in the pink, and then the two hands right at the back there.
Thank you very much to the presenters and you, Madam Moderator. Mine is very short and is directed to the legislators. It is about inclusivity. How do you, honorable members, include the workers when dealing with these debt issues in the countries? Because there's no how you can divorce workers from issues of debt. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to the table at the back there.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Leo Atapu, and my question is specifically for the honorable member from Ghana. It's really interesting to hear from you the social protection program in Ghana. I would like to know what kind of oversight do you carry out on that agency? We would like to know, for instance, if you could be able, if you assess disaggregated data of different donors that support the social protection program in Ghana.
Thank you. I think Honorable got your question. Yes.
Thank you, Chennai. My name is Crystal Simeone. I'm with the Nawi Collective. My question is to the delegate from NDI who spoke so eloquently on the question of women. And my question is rooted in the idea that narratives matter. And so the feminist movement, especially on the African continent, have been pushing this idea that we have to go beyond women's access to both services and opportunities, and looking at the systemic issues that surround them. So moving away from individually targeting interventions around inclusion, access to jobs, access to services, but a narrative that builds this idea that women do subsidize economies, especially as countries are going through austerity. You mentioned slightly it is women who will take care of sick, that they leave their jobs to take care of, households, but they're doing that even before they have had to leave their jobs, and there isn't an accounting for that. So wondering how you can rephrase the narrative and the questioning as you begin to look at what alternatives and rephrasing the problem, and just curious if you're doing any work on that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take the last question. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. Ma question, c'est également pour le parlementaire du Ghana. Nous avons apprécié. Maybe he needs to take a earphone.
Just one moment.
I can speak in English, maybe.
Okay. Okay, our panelists, are you okay? All right, you can go ahead.
Okay. I just want to ask, I appreciate what the parliamentary honorable say concerning Ghana. I just want to ask if they are aware about AU protocol concerning social protection and social security, who was adopted by the 55 countries in Africa since February 2022, who come from the willingness of the government of Africa, but to enter in force, this protocol must be signed by 15 countries in Africa. And this protocol, it is really our protocol, who don't have anything to have with the Convention 102 and the other protocol that our governments care for and say it is not affordable. They cannot invest in that. Then one, I want to ask him, is they are aware of that? If it is not, please, I would like to invite all of the countries who's here, all of the delegates, to take time to read the document who gives solution to all of the things that we are saying here. Giving access to social protection, it is to ensure to invest in the human capital, ensure to invest for the human rights for everybody, women, girls, boys, informal economy people, aged people, and also in this protocol, they put a way to finance social protection, the key for the development of Africa, and reinvest debt inside of this protocol. And since 1 year, we didn't have any state who ratify this protocol. So it's a big challenge to everybody here to have the language sensitive to social protection and to ask for the ratification of this protocol.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to come back to our panelists. Quite a few questions, but I think definitely our members of parliament are the ones in the hot seat. So what we will do is, I think, let's go this way. I will give each of you an opportunity to respond, I think, to the question that you feel best able to respond to. And then once you've done that, please also give us some of your final or concluding thoughts or remarks, because then we'll be wrapping up immediately after this. So a lot of questions around particularly the oversight role and the way in which members of parliament hold leaders to account. I think there was also a really good comment about, to what extent should we be looking at domestic measures, right, in terms of addressing our current debt situation. And then I think a really, really great question around a little bit more of the unpacking of the impact of debt on women. So Lee, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll head this way. Oh, okay, go ahead. We can start with members of parliament. Go ahead, Honorable. You can go ahead, Honorable, and then, because I think your mic is working? Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Please let me take, is that what kind of oversight that we do? Are we keeping the executive in check? Yes, in Ghana, for instance, although I said earlier that we are constrained with the structure of the executive meddling in the activities of the legislators, we have a unique opportunity at this time in the history of Ghana where both the majority and minority have equal numbers in parliament. The only thing that is separating the two is the only one independent member of parliament who decided to do business with the ruling party. Therefore, the ruling party has majority, but it's still a kind of hung parliament that we have. And because of this situation, the country is enjoying better than before. If you could remember, we wanted to do something called e-levy. It was passed as part of the budget, and when we got to its implementation level, the opposition stood their grounds to shut it down. We had to take it back. We took about 6 months before we were able to implement it. And even that implementation did not go the way we anticipated. And that was one of the main reasons why we had to resort to the IMF program to resuscitate the economy. So we are working, as I said earlier, at the committee level. We are able to scrutinize everything that comes to us, and then we pass the budget for appropriation. But one difficult thing that comes in is anytime there is an economic hit, the budget for the year tends to suffer, and they come back during the mid-year review for additional funds. And that one, you cannot do anything about it because some of the projects have started already, and taking into consideration the hassle that came recently, the effects of the COVID and the Ukraine and all those things, prices of commodities shot up. And as we speak, Ghana has an inflation rate of about 43%, which is high. It was even higher than that. But when we started with the program, it has started coming down. So we are managing. So we are not throwing away your interest. We represent you, and we are making sure we do the best under the circumstance. But as I said earlier, in Ghana, for instance, the structure is suffering. Then another question that I may want to talk about was a question on the disaggregation of funding for the social protection. Was it correct? Yes, social protection programs that we are doing in Ghana. There were some earmarked funds for, especially from the petroleum proceeds for free senior high school. That's the high school program that was started by this current government from 2017. And from that time, all students under the program have enjoyed, and there hasn't been any hitch on that score. And then if you look at the school feeding at the basic level, it was started during the period between 2001 to 2008, and that is also still ongoing. But that was a funding from, I think, I can't be too specific, but it was a funding from France that we started with. It was taken through the instrumentality of the former president, J.A. Kufuor, who is still alive. And I think when we get home, we can give more details to that. I don't have all the facts here present, but I know for these two, but the rest are being funded, like the nursing training allowances and teacher training allowances are being funded through the consolidated fund. We operate the consolidated fund. All earmark funds go into the consolidated fund first, and then they do the distribution to other sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Piri.
Thank you so much. I just want to respond, I think, to the concern on politics versus development, if I got it right. My brother commented that you find that projects are located on political lines, or maybe politicians want to promote their name instead of promoting development in the country. I think in my discussion earlier on, I remember I made that comment that why we saw a lot of finances from the date going to worst is because of the same issue. You find that as politicians, we first think of uplifting our names, fronting our names, instead of fronting development. And you're right, such things happen. And now as politicians or parliamentarians, how do we make sure that we keep this scenario? What I want to say is this. In the first place, I also mentioned that we need to strengthen democracy. You know, why as parliamentarians sometimes we fail even to control such things? It's because of shrinking democracy. We want to toe in the lines of our political party instead of promoting projects that will improve our economy in the country. So we have to make sure that as parliamentarians, first of all, we know that we are there to save the country, to save the electorates, than saving our own political parties.
When we support development of projects that are going to improve the economy, automatically our names are uplifted. Unlike you promote a project that is going to, you think is going to front your name, or maybe it has no economical impact in the country. At the end of it, people will be able to see that these politicians just wanted to uplift their names. And it is a wake-up call to all our parliamentarians to make sure that if we were to see Africa develop, we need to make sure that we look at projects that are going to bring economic development in our country. At the end of it, even our names will be uplifted, and the people, you can become popular just from that. So this is really very important, and also, as I've said, the democracy in the House, Democrats, to our leaders, as they have these meetings at the African Union, we have to make sure that the issues to do with the democracy is upheld. Definitely once we do that, we are going to see improvement in terms of how we allocate projects, what projects do you prioritize that's going to bring development in the country. Let me also comment on the issue of oversight. It is very important, like in the Zambian government, we have an act, parliamentary act on monitoring and evaluation. And I belong to the Committee on Cabinet Affairs, where we are just following up how do the government implement such an important board on monitoring and evaluation. We discovered that despite passing that act and the policy, the implementation were not up to date. Hence, most of the projects and government programs suffered a lot. And this is what, as parliamentarians, we need to make sure that we strengthen monitoring and evaluation, and we do not wait until things go to the worst. We have to monitoring and evaluating the projects, the government programs. It becomes our daily activity. From there, we'll be able to raise the red flag or a yellow flag immediately we see deviation from the intended purpose of the allocated funds of the project. So I think finally you said we should also give a comment. I just want to comment that as a parliamentarian in Africa, I think my call is that we should not wait, as my brother there was saying yesterday, let's start from somewhere to unite Africa or to protect our natural resources, but as we go on, we'll start improving where we see that we have not done it well. We have to start as individual countries in our own various parliaments to come up with motions that are progressive, that are inclined towards to protect our own natural resources. Just to give you a little example, if in my country, as this is what I'm planning to do, because each conference I attend, I think of, okay, now I need to bring this motion, that all licenses to do with gold mining, small-scale cooperatives, if they are given to our own people in the country, that can be a plus. After we raise that motion, now another motion comes in, all gold should be bought by our own country through maybe the central banks, so that we protect our gold from going outside the country unaccounted for and taxed. Because when our people are the ones to mine, the country through the central bank are the one to buy, we are going to make sure that at least every gold we mine is taxed and the resources remain in our country. And also a further motion, as the parliament, this is what we can do. That now let's have a motion where all those who are given licenses should be given a training by our governments, and be given empowerment like equipment, so that at least there's effective mining that we're doing. From that, we'll be able to start in a ritual way to control our own natural resources. So this we can do at various parliamentary levels, then we escalate it now to unite so that all African countries, they start doing the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I think it's great to hear some of the steps that you can already see coming from here. So what I'm going to ask is, starting with Lee and then coming towards me, I know it's going to be tight, but if you can, in 2 minutes each, respond, and then closing remarks. So over to you, Lee, and then Lavu after her.
Thank you. I just want to add to what the Honorable from Zambia has said, and to our question, we need to clean our house, you're right. We need to export more value. We need to exercise fiscal discipline, enhance our revenue collection, Madam, you said we need to stop IFFs, basically, stop bleeding of IFFs, but also in the meantime, we need some cheap debt. So that's still the reality. And I also just wanted to pick up on, and obviously the other thing is that I've said previously is we need proper development planning. We need to think forward thinking. What are we going to do? Because, you know, in this debt restructuring process, we have basically seen that so maybe let me start. When you restructure debt, what do? You come up with a plan. As a sovereign, it's your duty for the citizens of your country to come up with a plan that promotes sustainability and inclusive growth and minimizes economic and social costs. So you don't go and say, I need money, you tell me the terms. No, it doesn't work like that. And so I think from that perspective, the onus is on us as well as the international side to really come to a point where we come up with plans that are sustainable. And when we restructure debt, we restructure it for the last time and not the one stop, next month we restructure again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Lavu.
Thank you very much. So I'll speak to the theme of this conference, which is reimagining, rethinking, and reorganizing. And I think this is a very radical and daring thing to do for us as a continent. And it's not for the faint-hearted. It requires making bold, difficult, and sometimes unpopular decisions. So what I want to say in reference to the changing of the narrative for women in response to the question and from the audience is that perhaps in the same way we are asking for reorganizing the global financial architecture and asking for a paradigm shift on how things are operating right now, we should also rethink the position of women in the whole debt scenario. I mean, men for the last 100 years in Africa have put us in a debt situation. Isn't it perhaps time for us to give women a chance to get us out of the debt situation? So I think in reimagining the whole debt issue, let us try women. We've tried men for too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lavu. Theo, any last words?
Okay, thank you. Yes, on my side, very quickly, and lots of recommendations that I didn't go through, but very quickly, just to say that I think this problem starts to address this challenges starts inside. I'm saying this because I'm not sure we're going to get better solutions. The problem that we have now is bigger than what we had in terms of the debt burdens before we had HIPIC. But the solutions are not as ambitious as HIPIC and MD as we got during the HIPIC and MDRI period. But for us to get there, we need to get our house in order, because even if we were to get the most debt restructuring now without getting the house right, then I don't think we are going to get anywhere in terms of the accountability mechanisms, in terms of debt governance based on, founded on law and constitutionalism, which is something that if you access our borrowing charter, you're going to get that. But before we get there, we also need some good level of political commitment for us to get that, right? There is a certain political will that is lacking, and I don't think there is enough civil society effort towards this direction. We talk about a lot of things, but the next frontier is actually how do we actually push governments to work. It's no longer just about advocacy, it's actually bending their hands to do the right thing. Because if we don't get leadership, if we don't get the political will, we won't get what we want. We won't even get to the mobilizing ourselves through the African Union. So it is very important that as civil society, we invest some effort in terms of pushing the government to work, right? And there may be opportunities, some of them might come like what we're experiencing currently. There is always, they always say there's always a silver lining, right, in every cloud. I think there are moments of opportunity for change to get that political will and civil society. This is very big homework for civil society moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. James.
Thank you very much. Let me pick it up from the political commitment. I think there is no African government that doesn't have majority in parliament. So when we talk about political commitment, political goodwill, what exactly does that mean? Because we will always have the governments pushing the agenda. I think what we need support for the members of parliament and for those of us who work with parliament is also to highly encourage minority reports so that we can see the dissenting voices, what exactly they see. Because of what we see is majority reports, which is the government goodwill to be able to extend, if it's a borrowing, if it's a contracting, and so there's not much that we can do. Extending that political goodwill needs for us to continuously engage and get the dissenting voices, what exactly they mean in those particular closed engagements. There was a question that was asked of me on fiscal deficits, what can do. I don't think also, again, in Africa, we do not have a revenue problem. I feel like we have a spending problem. We just want to spend and spend and spend. So our deficits are generally driven by that greed to have large budgets, budgeted corruption in there and kickbacks. And that leads us to having those deficits, leading us to the hole that we are in. So I think we need to work a little bit on our budgets and see whether we can be able to get out of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause for the panel, ladies and gentlemen. So I think by and large, thank you so much, Theo, for giving us the context for this conversation. In terms of lessons and action steps, I think for our members of parliament, I think there were quite a few key takeaways here, right? And I think there was a point that was made earlier about the fact that, you are in this position of authority and can have both accountability to the executive, but also play an oversight role, right? And it was really great to hear, I think, from you, Honorable Piri, some of the steps you'll be taking as far as motions. And then I think another really good point that was raised was that even as we are talking about the international architecture, it's important that we look at some of the domestic reforms that also need to be taken to ensure that at least our house is in order. And then I know, Lavu, your comment received quite a bit of applause, but I think the question about the differentiated impacts, particularly on women, needs a little bit more interrogating. I think the point that was raised was that there's a lot of unpaid labor that women are already doing, right? And so there's something that needs to be said about recognizing that, even as we think about the impacts on women. So a huge thank you to everybody. I know you stayed a little bit over time. I'm now going to hand over to somebody from AfCODD, I think, so that you can let us know in terms of where we go from here. But just once more, a huge round of applause, and thank you so much, everyone.
Good work. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think we're done with this morning session, and I won't believe that we're going to have meal card, so we will just go for lunch. Thank you, and let's meet for the afternoon service.